2025 did not deliver a turning point on the battlefield, nor did it bring a quick end to the war. What it did bring was clarity about the limits of force, the cost of endurance, and the realities of Ukraine's relationship with the West. The war has settled into a prolonged phase of attrition, and many of the choices made this year, as well as the ones postponed, are now setting the tone for what comes next in 2026. With me in the studio right now is Caolan Robertson, an Irish journalist who has been living and reporting from Ukraine over the past years. So, Caolan, it's a pleasure, as always, to have you here, and let's make a real truly sum up of 2025 and think about what's going to be next in 2026. So, welcome.
Let's do it.
So, Caolan, lots of experts and military analysts saying that for now, what we see through 2025, the military zone, the front line, looks more or less stable. No real breakthroughs, unfortunately, from Ukraine, and no real breakthroughs for Russia as well. How do you assess the whole picture of the front line when you look through 2025?
Month by month, for a period, I thought that things were going to go really, really downhill. Things were going to start getting very, very dramatic. A few seasons before we were on here. And I remember that's when I was last on the front. That's when I was last in the Donbass. And this is when Russia had decided to push all of its energy, all of its resources, trying to take Pokrovsk. And what I thought was going to happen, and a lot of analysts, was that Russia had a lot of stuff in reserves, a lot of people mobilized, and a lot of equipment. And what we found was, to take Pokrovsk, which is the only real Russian breakthrough that's happened this year, they had to weaken the rest of the front lines, places like Kupiansk, which have now been reclaimed by Ukraine. And it showed that Russia doesn't have the resources we thought they did. And the biggest possible breakthrough that happened this entire year, which is basically just one city of many that Russia is trying to take, meant the loss of another. So basically, if you include the recapture of Kupiansk, you include the seizure of Pokrovsk, not much has changed in the overall picture. I remember I had a really bleak outlook on this back when Pokrovsk was being taken, because I didn't realize that gaps would be, opening up in different parts of the front line. But now that we're at the end of the year and we can look back at the bigger picture, it looks like Russia is actually in a much weaker position than it seemed when they were storming the city of Pokrovsk. And look what they've ended up with now. In the last couple of days, Russians have started using horses, cavalry, on the streets of Pokrovsk, on the streets of Donbass again, trying to do basically horse assaults instead of using tanks, which shows they're not just having a massive shortage of men fighting, but actual equipment. And basically, they're left with nothing to take one city. And I think they're in a much weaker position than we had realized, which again is why when we're talking about peace negotiations, it needs to be emphasized massively to Western audiences just how little resources Russia has right now. I mean, they're still using old Soviet weapons. They're trying to make new stuff. They're making Shahed drones. They're making things like this. But when it comes to the real on-the-ground things they need for assaults, it looks like it's a lot less than we expected. So probably going into 2026, we're just going to see the same thing again. If there's any other city that they want to take, any other part of the front line that they want to push on, it's going to sacrifice other areas and weaken other areas of the front that Ukraine can then take advantage of. Again, the ending to this year is two major things. One, the loss of Pokrovsk, but two, Putin announcing victoriously that Kupiansk has been captured, inviting the press, and Zelensky showing up instead. So it's a pretty bad position for Russia to end this year on in terms of their actual objectives. I genuinely think Putin thought that he could have captured the Donbass by now. His last statement about it was 2 months ago. He said he wanted it by March. There's no way any of that is possible the way things currently are. So it's a pretty good situation to end this year on for Ukraine. Much more optimistic than when I was last talking about this, given what's happened in Kupiansk.
Absolutely. Do you remember how often Russian propaganda was saying that they need some victories by the end of 2025? So just it's going to influence the negotiation process with the United States. And well, we see that Ukrainian little by little regaining the territories, actually. And the situation in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk is not what Russia's propaganda is showing to the audience, inner audience, and to the West, and etc. So, but I was reading that one of a Ukrainian former military soldier, and he is now a political analyst, he was saying that now war has become a contest of endurance, and political, military, technically, technologically. So do you see that the whole situation that way right now? And who is winning in that contest?
Yeah, well, it is about endurance, but it's about which side can hold on for the longest. Ukraine's side is basically hitting Russia's economy, hitting their oil refineries, hitting their strategic sites, things that can't be replaced, their air defense systems. And basically, Russia's pushing to every last person they possibly can to take as much land as possible before they run out. So the endurance is basically whether Russia runs out of money or whether Ukraine runs out of people to hold the front. And it looks like Russia's economy, and there's been brand new economic charts that have been released forecasting 2026, is now going to slip below Italy's. Before it was about the same size as Italy's, now it's going to slip below. Their economy is hemorrhaging. Everything in Russia that is not to do with war is declining. All of their minerals being mined, steel is declining. Rail freight in tons is declining as well, stuff being shipped across Russia. So every industry that isn't connected to war is going downhill. So it looks like when it comes to endurance, which is where this is going, Russia's on the losing end of that, because right now all they have is their oil exports, which are now becoming very difficult to ensure to travel across the shadow fleet, especially as these ships are being hit, and their ability to take oil out of the ground and to sell it to other countries. These are the two things that are keeping Russia alive. This is Russia's life support. And that very life support is now being disconnected. So if things continue as they are, or they get worse, I think they're going to get way worse, then, because these strikes are now nightly. Like, these strikes against Russia's oil infrastructure were weekly. Now we're seeing these maps every single night with red lines going into Russia. And they will not be able to sustain that long term. There's a labor famine in Russia right now as well. Replacing oil refineries is almost impossible. Sanctions in place on parts to put together to replace oil refineries are very hard to get. So fixing this stuff is basically impossible. I think that is really important to emphasize as well, because while we're talking about peace talks, it's all about which side has more strength, which side is stronger. And right now, Russia is on the back foot, I would say, in the last 3 months, more so than when I was last talking about it, because of their infrastructure, because of their money, because of their economy. It looks like all projections are negative for their economy in 2026, which is interesting.
Just a few days ago, Russia launched hundreds of drones and around 50 or 30 missiles to Ukraine, especially to Ukrainian capital, just before the Zelensky-Trump meeting in Miami area. How did you survive that night? And I saw your report just in the morning from one of the damage zone by Russia's drone.
I mean, this was, I think, one of the worst bombardments I've seen. And I live in a high-rise in the city center, so I can see and hear everything that's happening. And I could see that, they were hitting power stations. This was lighting up and illuminating everywhere. There's videos of this all over the place. But what was especially bad about that strike was just how prolonged it was. Normally Russia does this all in one go. They do it over 1 or 2 hours. But this was over like 10 hours. And it started at, 11 p.m., 3 a.m., and then went on from 5 a.m., designed to wear people down, designed to make it impossible for people to get up the next morning and function, and just to grind people down. But this felt, I think, much more extreme, and it was obviously targeted specifically to civilians as well. I know energy was hit, but the drones that were hitting the buildings that I was going and seeing the aftermath weren't drones that were falling out of the sky from debris. It wasn't air defense. You could watch these videos of Russian drones intentionally declining just before they hit their target, which were residential areas. So it was especially brutal as well. Retirement homes, these videos, and I went and saw the aftermath of all of this, of old people being pulled out of buildings on mattresses in the soaking streets. But it feels like, again, more of a push to try and break the morale of Ukrainians, to try and say, you're not going to be able to heat your home anymore because of Zelensky. You're not going to be able to get any electricity, or you have no safety because of Zelensky. Give up and vote for another president, hopefully Russian-backed, which it doesn't really have an effect here. I mean, all my friends here, everyone that I know here, people in the aftermath of these sites are still extremely resilient. There was a woman cleaning her window, literally, an hour afterwards. This is the effect of this. But Russia did that because there are about to be these peace talks. And he wanted to show that Russia is somehow strong because Kyiv is on fire. The only places on fire still right now are the oil refineries in Russia. And that is the key point. Kyiv survived. Kyiv was fine the next day. People were cleaning the windows, cleaning up glass. And it was a failed attempt to make Russia look strong and Ukraine look weak. Anyone that fires any weapons into civilian buildings is a person that is morally bankrupt and weak as well. You don't, if you're fighting a war and you have to resort to slaughtering civilians, you're not on the front foot. You're on the back foot. But this is something that Russians have been celebrating. I watched the reaction to this on Russian media and Russian comments saying that people in Ukraine deserve this. And it just shows again that basically Russia, as a nation, as a culture, as a country, is basically a death cult. They celebrate death in the way that ISIS celebrates death. They loved this. It's just, again, I'm glad that as many people as possible saw those reports because it shows what Russia is. Deprived would be losing, because this is the behavior of someone that's pathetic and losing morally and losing physically. So, I mean, that's what I got from this. And I saw the aftermath of these buildings. I saw, this direct hole in an apartment. Right underneath it was a Nova Posta. Right underneath that was a pharmacy and a barbershop. I looked all around the area. There wasn't a single energy site, a single piece of infrastructure. It was intentional against civilians. And that's what's so important to emphasize, because you get so much disinformation as well. There's so many people in the US and so many people who watch my videos.
What kind of?
People who say, well, Ukraine's doing the same thing, so of course Russia's going to hit Kyiv. But they don't realize that Ukraine are hitting the launch sites for those missiles. Ukraine are hitting the oil refineries at night when there's no workers there, which are fueling the war machine, legitimate military targets. This is, Ukraine has never launched hundreds of drones. At this point, it was 500 a few days ago and 40 missiles directly into residential buildings in Moscow. This has never happened. And that's the false equivalency that's so frustrating. One side throws missiles into apartment buildings and post offices. The other side tries to take out the launch sites. And that's the difference. And the two things are entirely separate. And to conflate them both either means you don't know what's going on or you're morally bankrupt.
Speaking about resilience of Ukrainians, I remember I woke up sleeping maybe for maximum 3 hours at that night, because as you said, it was the air raid sirens was about 10 hours, and I was going to a swimming pool, and I was walking thinking that probably it's over. Sometimes Ukrainian, they are just, sometimes that's a bad thing to do, forgetting whether it's still air alarm or not. So I was walking and I'm like, the music in my head, in my earplugs, and I hear that everybody's filming something. And I'm like, what do they film? And I see drone just passing over my head. So, and I was like going to the gym and, no, to the swimming pool. And I'm like, well, what can I do about that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know whether it's fine or not, but sometimes you're just forgetting about everything and just doing your thing. I don't know. I think it's the way to adapt somehow to the war. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it still wears people down internally in lots of ways too. Not to be sympathetic towards Russia, but emotionally as well. I think if this is to happen constantly every single day, it still isn't normal to witness something like that. And then to go about your daily life, I still think it has a psychological effect, and it's a difficult, it's going to be a difficult thing years from now when this is finally over for an entire population to kind of completely recover from that. This is why so many Ukrainians who go abroad, when they hear fireworks, their pets, they have this visceral reaction. But it's still amazing how resilient people are to this. Again, the woman cleaning the windows is the perfect symbol. When there was a massive attack that happened, 3 months ago here, there was a picture of a couple kissing in the window. It looked like they just got married, and half of the building was blown out just underneath them, and the photographer was there. So there's still a massive resilience with it. But it's not a healthy thing to live with.
Yeah, true. And it's also depending from your nervous system.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's talk, I think, not only about the front line, but about the peace talks that are happening all the 2025. So the United States throughout the year was trying to push various diplomatic, let's say, tracks from the conflict in the Oval Office at the beginning of this year. And then there was it was changing. They were choosing another approach to Ukraine and to Russia. How do you assess everything right now that's happening? Do you think Washington was truly interested in the ending of the war?
I think Trump thought he could end the war. That's why he promised his campaign vote that he would end it in a few days, because Trump oversimplifies everything. Again, he was a former real estate agent, and he is friends with Putin, and he thought that he could strike a deal. He thought he could probably make some money from Ukraine, make some money from Russia, and move on from it. He didn't realize that Putin actually isn't his friend. Putin isn't interested in anything other than destroying Ukraine. And now he's gotten bored of it. He is completely, I think, disinterested in what happens on either side. I think he's just wanting to wash his hands of it. But this war is still hanging down on him and his voter base very, very heavily. He still made a promise. And so he's almost doing the bare minimum to continue these peace talks, to continue doing whatever he can, answering the phone to Putin whenever he calls, answering the phone to Zelensky every now and then. But if you look at his envoy, I mean, his envoy, Steve Witkoff, was chosen by Putin. The peace talks that happened yesterday, look at the people at the table. It was a clown show. It was Jared Kushner. He doesn't even have security clearance. There's no reason for him to be there. It was Steve Witkoff, who's, again, been exposed by the Wall Street Journal for being completely crooked and corrupt. It was a clown show. Zelensky stood off the plane and there was no one there to greet him from the US department, not a single person, just the Ukrainian ambassadors, whereas Trump invited Putin.
You mean Sunday?
On Sunday, there wasn't a single US representative to meet Zelensky. I saw the
pictures of it.
Yeah, I made a video saying it's like he got off at the wrong stop, at the wrong airport in Oklahoma, and he was like, well, is this the right place? And it's just the ambassador stood there. And again, that was intentional to make Ukraine look weak. And I think Trump's point now is, okay, I think he's always sided with Putin. He's got financial interests in Russia. That's my opinion. And he wants to grind down Ukraine and portray Ukraine on the world stage as a weak country that is isolated. That's why Zelensky got off the plane on his own. That's why he's constantly saying...
Why does he need that?
Because then it's easier to side with Putin and to have Ukraine give up land, because that's what Putin wants. Putin wants to take as much land as possible right now. He wants to take the Donbass, sign a deal, hold the front line, reamass his army, and then take Kyiv. He knows that Trump probably will favor that because Trump has no interest in Ukraine, but that's only going to fly politically if Trump can convince enough people that Ukraine is weak and defenseless and there's no way that they can fight. And that's why he always puts Ukraine down. But there's no other indication to show which side Trump is on, other than listening to his own words. He started the peace talks yesterday saying, I just got off the phone with Putin just before the peace talks. And he said, actually, he's got Ukraine's interest at heart. He wants to see Ukraine succeed. He wants to actually give Ukraine cheap energy. He actually said this with a straight face. And this is everything you need to know about where his priorities are. And it's basically siding with Putin. I don't know how Zelensky stood with a straight face, even slightly, listening to this, because it's complete bullshit. But it's what Trump is convinced by. Trump thinks that he can make money. His entourage, Steve Witkoff, can make money. Jared Kushner, all of them can make money in Russia after this. And they're going to do everything they can to side with Putin. And if you look at two different pictures right now, to decide whose side, if you really want to know which side actually wants peace, one side puts on a military uniform, Putin, and says that he wants to declare war on Ukraine and says that he wants to continue war on Ukraine until it's destroyed. He did that on the weekend. The other side, Zelensky, shows up on time in a suit to do peace talks, to offer a ceasefire. Which side is interested in peace? That's all you need to know. The side that shows up, the side that says that they're willing to have a ceasefire. But Putin doesn't want to have a ceasefire. Putin wants to continue this. He says it with his own words. Putin's propagandists every single day say they want to destroy Ukraine. They say they want to take all of Ukraine, take as much land as possible. We don't need to listen to anything Trump or anything anybody else says anymore. We just have to listen to the Russians and their own intentions and see what they tried to do. And Trump has basically made a decision, and that's to go with Russia. And that's what we saw from these peace deals. And again, I've always said that these peace talks are a total waste of time. Maybe one benefit is that it continually shows Trump's intentions, which is to be on side with Russia. But really, it's just ludicrous at this point. That whole thing was a clown show.
From time to time, I see from Western media how they are trying, deliberately or no, or not, to justify Trump's behavior, telling that Putin is using KGB tactics with the American president. That's why he's behaving like that. Oh, I think we see what we see. It is what it is, and you don't have to justify the American president behavior because, I mean, he's not. I believe he's not that stupid to fall into any KGB tactics. Towards him, I mean, no. No,
and the KGB stuff is flat out. I mean, Trump fell for the painting of him. You know, this is classic KGB flattery. You know, Putin commissioning a beautiful artist painting of Trump. This is all he needs to feel flattered. Right now, the only way to please Trump in any way is to basically arrive on your knees with a pot of gold for him. Whoever's going to give him the most gold or the most money is going to be anyone that he's going to bother to listen to. And he thinks, well, can I make much money from Ukraine? Probably not. Can I make more money in Moscow like I did in the 90s? Yeah, probably. And that's his only interest, really.
We talked about the United States. Let's talk about Europe a little bit. So we hear all the time that Europe will stand Ukraine as long as it takes. But according to data from the Ukraine Support Tracker, shows that in 2025, European military aid failed to offset the drop in U.S. support. New aid allocations fell to their lowest level since 2022. How damaging is this gap in our reality and will be in 2026?
It's really damaging because Ukraine right now doesn't need boots on the ground from the rest of Europe. It doesn't need any of these things. It just needs the money to continue making the weapons, manufacturing the weapons, and hitting Russia where it needs to be hit. That's all Ukraine needs. And again, it's so simple. So many people think that, Ukraine is dragging us into World War III. We're all going to get drafted in Britain. We're all going to get drafted in France. By the way, that will happen if Russia wins. They will be needing to do that. But to help Ukraine, all they need to do is to increase their GDP spending, which is by a tiny percentage. And it's a huge shame that it's too little and too late and too slow. It's not surprising. Ukraine's going to have to figure out a bunch of different ways to fund that gap themselves, I think. But European Union politicians, again, proved by this report, are still too scared to commit what they actually need to do to stop Russia, which is at war with every single person in their country as well, which is to increase GDP spending from 1% to 2%, 0.1 to 0.2% to help Ukraine, and that would fill and probably double those gaps. So again, it's a shame that any of the countries that are closer to Russia have the highest per capita GDP spending on Ukraine. Places like Estonia have the highest because they know exactly what the Russian threat is. Any of the countries in the Baltics have the highest. The further away you get, the closer to Spain, the lower it gets because they don't realize that Russia's at war with them as well. So I don't think that's going to change. I think European leaders have been way too slow, way too bureaucratic. They're still arguing about frozen Russian assets. They've just come to the conclusion that they're not going to give them back to Russia, but they're going to hold on to them for now. They're just going to shove them down the side of the sofa. I mean, who knows what they're going to do with them for now? And that's super frustrating. But there's Russian money in Belgium. There's Russian money in Brussels bank accounts. There's Russian influence all throughout our European Union. And until that's dealt with at its core, this is always going to be a hesitation. Because whenever the European leaders say they're going to increase help to Ukraine, suddenly you'll get certain MEPs that might be on Russian payrolls saying, but we have a homeless crisis, but we've got a shelter crisis, we've got people that can't afford to eat and sleep, all our money is going to Ukraine, when it's like a couple of dollars a year per person. And that's what murkies the waters and slows everything down. So until the European Union sort their own shit out, this is going to continue. And this hesitation. And I think they can, but they just need to get their act together.
Frankly speaking, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, they raised their military support, but still they lag behind Nordic countries. And if to talk about Spain and Italy, it's, to be honest, it's almost nothing. So this, as I understand you, this uneven burden sharing means that they are just not alarmed enough in Europe, or
they're not united either. The point of the European Union was for it to be a European Union, was for it to be united on its ideas and its cores, and it's not doing any of its objectives after World War II. Neither is NATO, which is to be united in its support and its cause against its neighbours and its allies, and that's exactly what it needs to do right now. And it could do it in 2 seconds. Maybe it'll happen too late, but looking at the forecast, looking at what you just read out, I don't feel hopeful right now for that. I think it's going to be a while,
Yeah, actually, when you were saying just a minute ago that we have to listen what Russia's leader are saying, actually, not what the American is saying, but what Russian is. Just 3 days ago, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that if Ukraine will not surrender, they will achieve their goals by force. So do you think that's what we should expect in 2026? The same attitude we had in 2025?
I mean, what are they going to do? Invade Kyiv, try to take Kyiv? I mean, they've been promising and trying to do this for 4 years.
I don't know, Caolan. No. I hope not.
No, but it's almost like whenever they make a statement, they say, if Ukraine doesn't surrender, what are you going to do? Invade? We're going to invade Ukraine. Well, you've been trying to do that.
Tried to do that.
So that's what I always say whenever I see this. And people listen to it and they believe it. They go, oh, Ukraine better give up that land. They sound serious now. Like they weren't serious in 2022, but now they mean business. Now they're going to get a whole bunch of new horses and they're going to go straight for the capital. I mean, what is going on here? But I mean, people always think that the Russian bear is still this giant thing. Like it's, you know, it's finally going to take out the Oreshniks. It's finally going to launch the nukes. It's finally going to take this seriously. Russia are already throwing everything they can at Ukraine, everything. Again, that's why they're using horses. That's why they had to give up other parts of the front line and have weaknesses just to take one city. They don't have any of the stuff that they're pretending to have. And so their threats are empty. The threats are completely empty. Again, they lost Kupiansk because they tried to take Pokrovsk. So the foreign minister or any of these people coming on TV and saying, look, guys, if you don't stop, we're going to actually invade and actually do this war. It should be ignored. Just look what's happening on the battlefield. Ukraine right now has the leverage. Russia's oil refineries are on fire. Their shadow fleet are going to be very difficult to insure next year. Their submarines a major submarine was destroyed in the Black Sea. The Black Sea fleet that's already retreated from Sevastopol and now is in a small enclave of the Black Sea is probably going to have to move to the Sea of Azov next year, which means that the Black Sea fleet, which is almost not a fleet, is now not even going to have a Black Sea. I mean, this is like the position that they're in right now. So that's what we should be looking at. But what the foreign minister is saying is just trying to convince people that Ukraine should give up. He's basically saying what Trump is saying.
And also you sometimes, I know it's not giving you a real pleasure to monitor what Russian propagandists are saying. Do you see their narratives are changing from time to time, or is that just the same old bullshit?
I think in the last year, it hasn't changed. It's always been attacking, well, it's been attacking journalists and people like us for just trying to discredit anything we're talking about. But it's also been, again, constantly repeating Kremlin lies that Ukraine is weak and should surrender. Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, some of the biggest kind of like accounts on Twitter always say the same thing. They say Ukraine can't possibly hold on for any longer with this. They need to accept reality. They need to accept the threat that Russia really is. People that have never been to this country, and they're just going to keep repeating that because all Russia has left are empty threats. That's all they have left. And to get their trolls and their bots and their propagandists from all around the world to pretend that Ukraine cannot continue anymore, when actually it's Russia that can't maybe continue anymore if their economy collapses. And I think that's the most important thing. I think that's why I've been emphasizing so much the fact that they're now using cavalry and horses so much over tanks. I mean, the horse, you know, a Russian tank has about 750 horsepower. A horse has about 1 horsepower. And they're using those because they've run out of tanks. And the difference is quite stark. And again, that is what they are left with. And I think that's what we should be focusing on so much, looking at the videos and the photos of what's happening with the Russian army. Literally yesterday, there was videos of Russian soldiers in the Donbass trying to throw snowballs at FPV drones because they'd run out of ammo and they'd run out of weapons. I mean, this is ridiculous. But that's the reality. And the propaganda is obviously going to be the opposite, which is that they're strong and they're going to launch it any second. But I mean, it's just, yeah, it's the same.
Snowball into the drone. He's stupid.
I mean, it's festive, I guess, but I don't know. But it's because they've basically run out of everything. Because Russia can't even supply these troops with the stuff they need, so they have to go on these random assaults constantly with basically nothing. And it's like World War I, pre-World War I warfare. It's ridiculous, really.
Ridiculous. Horses, donkeys, snowballs. That's the second world army.
The second biggest army, the most feared army that we should all be terrified of right now. Yeah.
And also, just I think in February 2025, the Danish Prime Minister said that Russia already sees itself in the conflict with the West. Then in summer, the top German general said that they also kind of feel that it's going to be the last peaceful summer for Europe. Then we see some echoed statements in Poland. Do you think that something is coming bigger in the nearest years, or is it too little too late to react on that?
Not in the next few years. I think it's good to prepare and to recognize, the best thing about this is to recognize that Russia is a threat to Germany and to all these countries. But Russia, again, are struggling with numbers right now to take towns and cities in Ukraine. They're not going to be taking Berlin anytime soon. What they could do, which is what Russians have gotten very good at, is making drones. So they could fly drones into these countries and these cities. They've already flown 20 this year over NATO airspace. as provocations. But I mean, in the long term, if you're looking at 10 or 20 years from now, if Russia were to ever take Ukraine, they would mobilize the millions of people in this country and they would turn them and force them to fight against Europe. This would be an absolute disaster. And that, if Russia were to take Ukraine, I don't think it will, but if it was, then that would be a realistic thing. So it's good that they're thinking about it, but it's good that they're at least acknowledging that Russia's a threat. That's great and a first time for a lot of European leaders. But they're not going to be storming Berlin anytime soon. No.
Every time we're talking with you, Caolan, every time you're sending your messages to our audience, and predominantly it's the audience from the West, it just reminds me, and I've told you before, the movie of Don't Look Up, where you are repeating the same important messages every time, and it still feels like not everybody just hear them properly.
Yeah, I mean, we are the news anchors right now. There is a meteorite heading towards Earth right now that's Russia, a threat to all of us. The meteorite is planes being shot down, sabotage across Europe, buildings being blown up, arson attacks, drones being launched over NATO airspace. We're screaming into the camera, this is happening right now. And everyone at home is saying, oh, it's fine. We can put on some glasses. The meteorite isn't actually a big threat. The meteorite is actually a good thing. The meteorite, we should negotiate with the meteorite. And maybe we can convince it to work with us. Maybe we can live on the meteorite and we can all have like a symbiotic relationship. This is literally Don't Look Up right now in real time, which feels quite meta.
We have to have a business deal with it.
We should do a business deal with the meteorite. Of course, there could be rare earth minerals on the meteorite that we could mine. I mean, this is it. But again, Russia are committing sabotage and planning to bomb planes into the United States and all across the world. And we're looking at it and saying, but Russia, they're Christian. They've got priests. They're a Christian nation. They're great. Aren't they our friends? It's a perfect analogy.
There are priests actually baptizing their soldiers to kill Ukrainians. How do you say? They're just baptizing them for that? Well, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, to baptize them. Yeah, because there's no actual religion in Russia. Russia's religion is a death cult, essentially, celebrating death. The only Christians that are being killed right now en masse, and Trump loves to talk about Christians being killed right now, doesn't he, about Nigeria? He's just bombed Nigeria because Christians are being killed. Well, Christians are being killed in Ukraine every single day, in Europe, even closer to home, by a demonic Antichrist nation. So, I mean, that's another priority that Trump has as well, suddenly caring about Christianity when there are something like 2,000 religious sites damaged in Ukraine in the last 4 years. But yeah, I mean, look at the way that the priests dress in Russia. It's like a fancy dress costume. It's like Halloween. They dress up in like silly over the top kind of monk outfits and priest outfits, and then they go and hang out at the Kremlin and talk about murdering civilians in Europe. I mean, these people are just unhinged. There's no religion in Russia other than celebrating death.
And yeah, real terrorists, right. And looking back at 2025, what real Ukrainian breakthroughs and achievements in the military sphere you can name, like real tangible gains?
The baby sea drones that have been developed and worked on that took out the submarine, and I know Ukrainians have been using sea drones before, have advanced massively. They're now almost completely undetectable. They're incredible. They will wipe out the Shadow Fleet. The Black Sea Fleet will be gone by the end of 2026, guaranteed. There's no way to protect this, whatever's left of it, which is very exciting but completely possible with $200,000 baby sea drones. Technology on the battlefield, I've just seen change every single month. So much of it is impossible to talk about because it's still like under wraps and it's still Ukrainian tech. But AI, at the start of this year, AI systems and AI air defense systems that have been deployed in Odessa and parts of Ukraine are basically incredible now. They can take down everything from an S-300 to an FPV drone in terms of size. And I guess the biggest advancement is look where we were sitting on these chairs if we were last Christmas. No oil refineries had been hit at all, really, in Russia. Deep strikes weren't happening in Russia, not 12 months ago. This only really started this year. The dynamics on the battlefield have shifted dramatically in terms of what Ukraine has been doing. And that's all built basically in this country, excluding some of the optics. That's mammoth. It's massive. It's what would take most countries over a decade. And when this started in 2022, the full-scale invasion, lots of NATO chiefs went on television and British Army colonels, and they said, There's no way that Ukraine could develop missiles. There's no way. It would take decades. It took us decades. It would take Ukraine decades. The fact that Ukraine is now mass producing them and they figured out the tech themselves is amazing. Yes, they did open up some storm shadows and have a look inside and get some tips and advice, but they've done it, and that is astronomical. And it wasn't happening this time last year, so a lot. I mean, this country has done leaps. It's been, yeah.
Even I felt for that we're not capable to build some huge missile like Flamingo. And then I remember 6 months ago or something like that, I was at the Off the Record conference. Now it's a public information, but back then it wasn't. It was summer. And I spoke to new Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yulia Sviridenko, and she said, look, we're going to present something huge to you in the nearest future. And I'm like, seriously? Like the missiles, air defense, and, you know, it's happening. I was very surprised in a good way. So, yeah. Caolan, on the other side, we talked about Ukrainian achievements, but what Russia couldn't gain, what was Russia's biggest failures of 2025, despite it massive resources, or they are pretending they have one, and despite all the brutality on the front line?
Well, Russia hit the 1 million milestone this year, so they've now lost 1 million personnel, and they're losing 1,200 people a day. They've increased those numbers quite a lot. It was about 600 a day 2 years ago, so they've managed to get those numbers up. So they're succeeding really well in that, in losing people and losing tanks and losing ammo every single day. So they've hit those targets. They have failed in achieving every single one of their goals set out for 2025, which was to take the whole of the Donbass and also to take Zaporizhia. And they've taken Pokrovsk, which is a city that has been fought over for 2 years, a city of 60,000 people, which is unfortunate. It's annoying. Now they've got access to the railroads there. They're going to ship more stuff in. But still, it's about 1% of what they thought they could take and what they promised they could take. So it's a lot, looking back, it's a lot less. And even 3 months ago, I was more pessimistic about this again. I thought that they were going to keep going towards Zaporizhia, but Pokrovsk is everything they had. And they still only control about 90% of it.
Yeah, not 90%. And some part of it is still under Ukrainian control.
Yeah.
So the Russians could not move further, right?
So it stopped, and that's it. And now we know that's all they have left. They've announced a new mobilization of about 400,000 people in Russia. They'll take a long time to train. They probably won't even be trained. But also, the fact you have to force a new mobilization of that size shows that you have run out of people. So we got a really good oversight into what Russia looks like from the inside this year and what they could take and what they have.
Caolan, you are living in Ukraine for more than a year. And before that, you were going back and forth to cover the Russia's war in Ukraine. So what still impressed you about Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian people who are trying to live through the war?
Time. When I first got here, it had been less than a year since the full-scale invasion, and I didn't realize how long it would go on for. In a few months' time, this will have gone on for longer, since World War I, since the full-scale invasion. And no one had any clue about that. And I already saw soldiers every single day with almost no sleep, in positions in Chasiv Yar, near Bakhmut, all across the front line, put every single thing they had into defending their country, all volunteers. And the fact that I'm still seeing exactly the same mentality with the same people who still volunteer, still every single day, after all this time, after all this misery, after all this destruction, to this day is the most astounding thing that Ukrainians have carried on for so long. I know there's fatigue and it's difficult, but the fact that they haven't been broken at all in any unit, in any region, is astounding, is the most amazing thing.
Have you seen the interview of the Ukrainian paramedic, the man who was on the positions for more than 400 days? And even he said in the interview, I don't know how I got through everything that I saw, that I did, and what happened to me. So yeah, this is just a living proof that people can handle a lot. Well, we talk about Ukrainians, so yeah, Ukrainians. Caolan, I have a part of a personal question that I have asked you personally, but never on camera. So my question to you, if the war will over, do you see yourself still living in Ukraine? And if you do, what city for you feels like home? Is it Kyiv or Odessa?
Definitely going to stay in Ukraine. I mean, even if I still cover other conflicts and other wars, I want to have a home in this country and have this as just a base for where I live, where I can start a family. I mean, I don't know. It's whenever I go across the border, whenever I've left through Przemysl or through Budapest, I already start to miss Ukraine within like the first couple of hours. Even if I'm going somewhere, you know, really hot and sunny, I'm still thinking, my local Nova Posta, my friends, everything that just works here. I've got so familiar and at home with the streets, but I kind of felt like that as soon as I went to Odessa for the first time. But I think when this is over, I'll probably move to Odessa. I think there's nothing like the Black Sea. It's so beautiful. There's something about that region, and you know, both my parents are adopted. We did this DNA test and found that my ancestors are buried between Odessa and Kherson in that oblast. And I feel like a full-blown connection to Ukraine that I've never really felt anywhere else in my life. So I think forever, really. And it's also an amazing place to live geographically because it's right between Europe and also Asia. So if you need to cover something in Asia, I've always got a home here and then fly. Hopefully I'll be flying from Odessa airport when everything's open again. Yeah, but I cannot imagine living outside of Ukraine again, regardless of what happens with the war. It just feels like home. It always kind of has in some ways. It's why I was always drawn back here. After the first visit, going back to London and just feeling like, why am I here? Like it just felt wrong. I don't know. I love the culture, the way people treat each other. I love that there's a respect that people have for each other, the way that people manage their homes, their country, the values that people hold. It just feels right. And everywhere else is a little bit dysfunctional now compared to Ukraine. And it's so weird to say that because there's a war going on, but the rest of the world is a bit clueless and a bit messed up politically and also with just functionality. I don't know, it just feels like right here. So I'm not going to go. If I'm allowed to. I don't know what the visa situation is. Now I've got a military press accreditation, which means I can be here indefinitely, but I don't know how it works afterwards with getting citizenship. I'll have to figure all that out, but I would love to stay.
Yeah. That's nice to hear. And everything that you're saying about Ukrainians and Ukraine as a country, I can relate, really. I agree. And you know, going through 2025 and looking back at this year, it was a real, true roller coaster for me as a Ukrainian, for the front line, for our political situation in our country. And it's very hard to predict what's going to happen next, but I'm pretty sure that there will be a day when we're going to sit together with you, me, Nataliia Lutsenko, and Caolan Robertson, talking about Ukrainian victory and the ending of the war. I'm pretty sure it will happen.
Me too, 100%.
Thank you, Caolan, for your time. It was a great pleasure. And thank you for, talking to our audience throughout this year, and not only to our audience, just to the world. Thank you for that.
No, thank you.